Hi, this is part 2 from the first video I did on balanced breathing, which was to do with pushing your diaphragm in and also drawing into your diaphragm or into your belly region of breathing. And it's all about balance, and the key thing is with the balance here, it's important for your health. We have to make sure our breathing techniques are right to make sure our health is right, because that's most important. So really and truthfully, whatever, I'm going to be coming to the pressurized air system in a minute, but before, I just want to mention that making sure that you're listening to your body when you're practicing any techniques and to do with your breathing, that it feels right for you and you're progressing with it in the right way, because if something's not right, it will adversely affect your health, in normal breathing in life, let alone with the didgeridoo, which isn't the most normal breathing practices. So this is pretty key, really. So, and also, if you listen to your body, after you've been given techniques to practice, whether it's breathing or whatever, then listen to your body and then just learn to develop the inner confidence and the intuition that what you're doing is good for your body and it's good for your health. So that's most key. That's most important. Right, so the pressurized system, what is that? So in the first part, when I covered about drawing in, and your diaphragm comes out, it's down there, the diaphragm comes out, and then you push in. Those were the two things I was talking about. I'm trying to learn to get some balance between those two things. It doesn't have to be exact equal balance, pushing in. I'm not talking about it. You have to feel engaged, right? You might end up drawing in more and then doing less pushes. The whatever balance works for you, that's important. As again, listen to your body, find out what's working, and practice to see if you can adjust it if you need to. But with the pressure, basically, all I'm talking about is when you're playing, you're breathing in and you're doing your circular breathing. Oh, also, it's better to have the circular breathing established before you do this, because you don't want to overcomplicate it. If you're just trying to get your circular breathing, you don't want to overcomplicate it by doing this at the same time. Although some people like to do lots of things at once and will want to practice. It just works for some people, but for a lot of people it won't. So if you're one of those, don't do, wait until you got your circular breathing and you're confident with it before you attempt the part 1 video and this as well. Right, so the pressure in the system is when you're breathing in and out, like I'm pushing out, I'm playing on the didge, there's a certain balance there already, but also there's another thing going on, and that is, it depends on how much pressure you've got built up in your system. So in other words, for me nowadays, what I do is I tend to have a little bit more air pressure than is needed. So I've drawn a little bit more air in than that's needed. So I've got this pressure. I'm going to show you on the didge in a minute to show you, well, you won't actually see what I'm doing, but I'll explain it. But when you first start playing and you've got like this, you're struggling with having too much air and too little air. I'm not talking about that. That's kind of a real big thing. What I'm talking about is a very kind of a much more finer adjustment about how much air you've got topped up in your system once you've got your circular breathing, so that it can help you play in a more relaxed way. So I'll just play something and I'll just sort of explain what's happening. Right, so there's a really basic rhythm. It's not about the rhythm today, so it doesn't matter what rhythm I'm doing. But what I'm doing there, I'm breathing roughly on every other beat. So it's like I'm going do-wah, do. If I'm just saying do-wah, do-wah, I'm going do-wah, 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 wah, do-wah, wah. So I'm breathing on every other one. Now, it doesn't matter too much here about how many times you breathe on the circular breathing. So don't, get too caught up with that. But what for me when I'm playing, let's just say I'm breathing on every other go. I can do it easier like that because I've taken a little bit more air in than I need. In other words, I've pressurized my system so that when I'm doing the first circular breath, taking a breath in, I've got enough air, and then I go do-wah, and then I go another do-wah first one, and then I may breathe on the second do-wah and every second one because I've got enough air in my system to do it. You know, it's like I'm not running out of air. And also it means that I can, when I did the papawa there, I wasn't using much force from the belly, very tiny. Most of it's coming from the back of the tongue, and again, I'm just sort of, the breath's going out. It's naturally deflating, and as the air's deflating and going through the didge, you know, when you're breathing out, I'm not using any energy at all. So it's kind of like it can really help you to sort of relax on the didgeridoo. Because you're taking a little bit more air than you needed. Now, as I say, don't confuse it to having too much air when you're beginning playing and thinking, I've got too much air, because when you've arrived at this stage and you've got your circular breathing already okay, then I'm just talking about introducing or making the pressure slightly more or a little bit more than I would otherwise need. And then I can relax so that I'm not breathing every go. You know, I'm not a frantic breather. I don't go and breathing. And sometimes if I'm doing some power play and there's a lot going on, yeah, I might need to draw every go, you know, or use the technique that I showed you in the last video, whichever way around. I might have to do it every go. But at other times, I can relax and just use the pressure from the system. So no matter what I'm doing, the pressure in my lungs or the diaphragm sort of down here is always inflated enough, pressurized enough so that I can almost play without having to do anything, if that makes sense. You know, and when I became aware of this some years ago, I thought, well, that's interesting, you know. It made me aware because sometimes you might find that although you've got your circular breathing, you seem to have it, you might end up sort of almost slightly deflated and think, oh, I haven't got quite enough air. So it's worth just adjusting that, or it might be the other way around. But as I say, it might be worth adjusting or practicing this or becoming aware of it so that so that it can help you fine tune this pressure system, which can be really useful, you know. And also health-wise, I think it's beneficial because you're not straining yourself. You know, one of the things you must make sure that whenever you practice any teaching, you never strain yourself. And as I said before, if something doesn't fit right or something's not working, don't do it, or persist up until the point where you think, actually, this isn't going to work for me. It's mucking my breathing up, and then don't do it. You know, or come back to it, try it again, and think. You know, I've done that before with certain exercises, and when I've come back, it's worked, and it might not have at the time. So you just have to kind of be very aware of what you're doing and observe, and you won't necessarily be able to do this earlier on when you're learning because this might be too much to become aware of it all. But as you develop and it becomes, those circular breathing aspects become automatic, then you can become more aware of the other things like this pressure and, and in part one as well, video where I've shown as well. So that's it really. The key really is balance, balanced breathing. I call it this video balanced breathing because it's not only key for your didgeridoo playing, it's key for life. Breathing is such an important thing. If you breathe wrongly, it can do not much good. So breathing correctly is important, and this can help. Being aware of this pressure can help just improve overall and fine tune, and that can work for you. And if it doesn't, just go back to what you normally do. But it's down to you to become, or it's your responsibility to become aware of your body enough when teachers have given you a technique or on breathing or whatever it is, to take on board and practice and see how it works for you, or if it doesn't work for you. And that's all there is to it, really. So anyway, being aware of this should be a good thing, and it will just help your playing in the future, being able to become aware of the pressure and maybe just top it up a little so that you've got the natural pressure from your body, from your diaphragm and that, to play stuff without having to, it's the other way round from overdoing it. So it can be a very healthy thing to be able to do. Anyway, I think that's about it. Give it a go, give it some practice, and or just become aware of it. You might already be doing it, to whatever extent, Anyway, that's all for today.